Hello, I'm Errol Manners.
And I'm Henriette Manners.
And Henry, our son, is also part of the business, but he's not here today. And we've been here in this shop dealing for actually about 35 years. And in this wonderful street, which is one of the great antique dealing streets of London, with a history going back the odd 100 or more years, and full of all the great folk memories of the antique trade. We specialize in historic ceramics of probably mostly European, pottery, porcelain, a lot of English, and with little forays into the Far East, China, Japan, and even into the New World, Mexico. This is a model close to my heart. There's one in the Victoria and Albert Museum, which I've always admired. It's Berlin, 1766-67. And I think it's the masterpiece, actually, of Christian Wilhelm Meyer, an artist who came from Meissen. There have been 3 of these on the market in the last 40 years, and we've managed to buy all of them. It's a model he made soon after he arrived in Berlin, in as I said, 1766, and it depicts Mars, the god of war, who's taken off his armor, he's seated down, and he is the muse of history, Clio, about to write about his great deeds. And it's a sort of tribute to Frederick the Great, because here, after the 7 Years' War, he put aside his weapons, and the liberal arts, the music and painting and literature, were going to then flourish. And I just think that's a great bit of sculpture in any medium. It happens to be in porcelain. I think is very remarkable. I like pieces that tell a story, and this told us a wonderful story. It's a late Ming porcelain bowl, quite a modest bowl. There's an identical one actually in the British Museum with the mark of the one of the Emperor, so dating to around about 1600. The mounts are silver gilt, quite beautifully done, the little earpieces, finely worked. And it has a date, 1607, and that's an interesting date because up till about that period, Chinese porcelain was very rare in Europe. Now, we bought this and didn't know anything about its history. It had its date, 1607, and it had Anne Marguerite de Wiltz. Well, it didn't take long for us to discover Wiltz was a little town in Luxembourg. And it goes on, envie sans envie, a little motto saying sort of rivalry without envy. And B. And we found that she married the Baron of Braubach. And so B means she's the Baroness or the Baronine de Braubach. It's revealed its story. This belonged to a particular lady who married this Baron, who became a great lawyer, actually. And they built a great Renaissance castle in Germany, part of which still survives. You get pieces, very much of the same type in the great European collections, like in the residence in Munich. But rarely with an inscription that reveals so much about its history.
What would you say to a collector or a young person even who came through your door were the prime points to buying a piece of porcelain or pottery?
Yes, I think research. You've got to research. You've got to study. You've got to go to the museums. You've got to read the books. Actually, one of the great shortcuts is befriending a dealer who knows, or a fellow collector, and you learn about your subject.
Well, they can advise you because they will have been through the hard knocks of life, buying things that they maybe shouldn't have bought, or buying things that maybe were restored that they weren't aware of. So, therefore, if somebody comes to you with your incredible knowledge, you're cutting out a lot of those.
Yes, and there's a lot of stuff that just isn't in the books. It's the sort of which areas might suffer from sort of fakes or over restoration, and the areas where there are, because there are pitfalls in our business. I mean, that makes it exciting. It's not easy collecting or perhaps dealing either. And I think also sort of the role we play partly is that we're great filters. Our dealers, we look at tens of hundreds of thousands of objects constantly, sort of across the world, through sale catalogues, on the computer and in person, and we're sort of filtering it out. And we're looking for that fraction of 1% that really has got something.
1% is probably being generous.
Yeah, a fraction of 1%, I said, and it really is, because there is so much perfectly decent stuff around, and you're just looking for the bits that have extra magic, or fascination, you can come to, I hope, a shop like ours, and what you see around you is very often is the product of years
of experience.
Yeah, years of experience.
And you're now passing on your knowledge to students at West Dean College.
Yes, there's conservation, which BADA supports, and West Dean is so good because they're teaching that the most sort of judicious museum style of restoration, which is non-invasive, reversible, and really doing things to a minimum. I mean, ideally, you don't need to restore anything, but when you do, it should be kept to a minimum.
So if you only had 24 hours in any city in the world, which city would it be, and which museum would you visit?
There's I suppose, Istanbul and the Topkapi is going to be sort of high up there. It's the layers of history. You can go into Hagia Sophia and stand in where Justinian stood in 520, and the building is still there. And you can see it, it's had crusaders, it's had the Ottomans, it's had recently Erdogan turning it back into a mosque. I mean, there are just layers and layers of sort of history. It's magical. And then you have to go over to Venice to look at the pieces that the crusaders stole from Istanbul. And so these are sort of treasures of the Byzantine Empire preserved. So, and Vienna, of course. Vienna for the Kunstkammer.
I love Vienna.
Vienna
Amazing.
for the Kunstkammer.
And the cake.
And the cake. And the cake.